All right, let me, all right. Welcome, everybody, to the main meeting of the San Antonio chapter of the Native Plant Society of Texas. We're very happy to have you here with us. Let me see if I can. There we go. All right. Do we have any new members in the room with us tonight? Oh, we do. Okay, a couple. Okay. And of course, welcome to all of our returning members. Do we have any visitors in the room tonight? Wow, okay, we've got quite a few visitors in the room. And let us know if you want to on Zoom, if you're a new member or a visitor. And of course, we really appreciate our Zoom audience attending. Got all these little windows showing up here. Okay. I wanted to show this because some of you may have already done all of your pruning and your gardens all in shape the way you want them. But some of you may have left a lot of your growth from last year, or maybe you're kind of in between. I started cutting some things back, but as you can see here, I came across a few things where there was already somebody there using them and giving me the side eye. And the green anoles, this happens to be in a frostweed, and I've also had this experience with some of my Turkscat, where I go over to start pruning them back, and because they're a little bit unsightly, but then this beautiful little green anole comes up and says, "Why are you destroying my space?" So if you haven't done all your pruning yet, just take a little look before you start cutting everything down, just to see if anybody's already in there using that space before you cut it down, and maybe you'll decide to leave it. Before we get to the pollinator plant of the year announcement, I apologize, I don't have a slide, but we have a huge announcement, and Peter Hernandez is going to come up, and Jane, and they're going to tell us about the results of this year's City Nature Challenge.
So I'm sure everyone has heard City Nature Challenge was wonderful. We exceeded all expectations all across the board. It was absolutely amazing. Let me just give you some stats on it. We finished with 134,000 observations, which put us second in the world. We defended our national status. Again, so we're national champions. Amazing. Our primary goal this year, as we told you before in our last meeting, was to increase our participants. We started last year with 1,400 participants, and our goal was to get to 2025 in 2025. And we finished with 2,667, so almost doubled our participation, which is amazing. Our second goal was to increase observations per observer, which is really tough because we increased participation by so much, but yet our average observation went from 46 to 50. So not only did we increase participation, the people that participated worked really super hard. And our third and most meaningful a goal was to increase our impact on biodiversity. And that was kind of a nebulous goal, but we wanted to get out and see more habitats, more regions. And we did. We saw 1,000 more species this year than we saw last year. And we finished with almost 5,000 species in a 4-day weekend. So just absolutely amazing. So congratulations and thank you for all of your hard work. It was absolutely fantastic. Good job, you guys.
Thank you. I do have a trophy, but before I get to the trophy part, and let go of this trophy. The Native Plant Society, and we were here, in March, talking to y'all about the City Nature Challenge, and it was very interesting to come in and join. But y'all are very integral to our success. So although we have a trophy, this is second place. I know in NPSOT we did a civic nature challenge rather than a city nature challenge. We did a civic nature challenge, and that's the category that we were in, the Native Plant Society. And this society, it wasn't only, if you look at the iNaturalist site, you'll see that it's not only, it just says NPSOT. And it doesn't specify San Antonio. It doesn't, so it really encompassed Fredericksburg, it encompassed Bernie, Guadalupe, Kerrville, Lindheimer, and New Braunfels. Those are all in our 12 county territory for the City Nature Challenge. So really hats off. One thing I commend y'all, more than just providing the data, and I think the data that y'all provided was very valuable. You know, yes, you came in second next to the master naturalists, and who, you know, the master naturalists are just so gung ho into biodiversity and doing that. Also, but one of the things that I see is that Jane talked about the species. Y'all were very integral on those species. And Native Plant Society, Jerry just walked in just at the right time, Jerry. He was very integral in introducing, hey, let's not only look at plants, let's look at bugs, let's look at other things that are around plants. And also, there was some confusion because with Civic, we had a couple of rules in there, Civic Nature Challenge, where we had all the nature-oriented groups together. And one of the things that we kind of posed on people is, if you're a master naturalist, you can't be a Native Plant Society, or can't vice versa. So we had some hard choices to do. So we had 32 people here being in that challenge, where we had 51 master naturalists. So I know there were some master naturalists that, oh, I wanted to be a Native Plant Society, and they could. But and they were all honesty, it all worked out. But that was very important to the whole progress. But I want to take time really to talk about the people that the importance, because I know we had a couple of folks here that are here that did 1,000, although they weren't showing up on the Native Plant Society, but they did 1,000. They were participants. Jerry is one, and there was who was another one that hit over 1,000, because we just talked about 50.
There she is.
There he is. Yes, Yankee Tree, right? In iNaturalist, he's Yankee Tree. So very good. So those were all contributors. And then also of the 32, I know Claire and Cleve Powell and Craig right here in the front was a good participant. And again, one of our levels was 200 or better. Well, in the Native Plant Society, we had 13 people busting that 200. So that average was really pushed up by the Native Plant Society. I know Michael, I think Michael might be here. Yep. Oh, there you are. Yeah, he was participant, and Haley, where's Haley? Or Haley was a participant. She came in with good numbers, and Pam was good, and Teresa. Y'all broke over a 200. Did I miss anybody that broke over 200 that's here? Frank? Yeah, but I know you were over a 200. So thank you. And I'm gonna cut this short. But not only observations, not only species, but one of the big things before I turn this over was identification. Identification is very important to us, because one of the things that we do is, you know, there's this data that's being flown through the iNaturalist, and coming back and identifying that is very important. I think the Native Plant Society is very important on that when it comes to Cindy Segovia and Clive Powell. They're big identifiers. I know Cindy, if you're out there, she did over 10,000 identifications, and that's really helped our numbers overall, where we now go research grade on that. So I really hats off. And with that, I will stop and present Lee the trophy here. Thank you, Lee, and thank you, Native Plant Society.
Second place. This is awesome. Can I get a quick photo of you?
Oh, sure.
Photo, sorry.
Before the moment passes, awesome. Here we go.
No, kidding.
Oh, 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. And I got to put the point.
Thank you, Peter and Jane, so much for organizing all of this and getting us all excited about it and doing it. Y'all are a big part of why we got our second place here, and what, first in the nation? Did you mention that? Like, that's huge. Thank you all so much. Okay, so if you remember, the pollinator plant of the year this year is lemon bee balm. And our chapter got some amazing seed from Native American Seed. And we will be doing a seed packet giveaways. In fact, everybody in here, if you didn't already get one, we've got packets up at the front desk. And I'll be announcing some events that are coming up that will be giving seeds away as well. It's a beautiful wildflower. And we're really excited to announce that our grant program is now live. You can go on our website and apply. There are some specific requirements, and the details can be found at our webpage for the grant program. But we've got a standard grant for up to $500, a grower grant for up to $500, and micro grants for $50. And we are able to provide grants to a much broader audience with this new program. And so if it's of interest to you, please check it out and see if you might be interested in applying. Okay, so we have a few really fun events coming up. This Saturday is the Pollinator Tea Party at Confluence Park by the San Antonio River Foundation. Our chapter will have a table there. We'll be giving away the Pollinator Plant of the Year seed packets and sharing information about our organization and about native plants with folks. It's at Confluence Park from 10 to 2. There are going to be a lot of other vendors out there and educational folks and lots of fun activities. So check out their website, and they are asking people, if you want to dress up as your favorite pollinator. And rumor has it that someone in this room may be dressed up as her favorite pollinator, which is a fly. And I'm not going to say any names, Alicia. She was having a hard time kind of figuring out how to do it, but I have faith. Okay, and on June 28th, we have a fourth Saturday Nature Walk series. It's the Go Native Natives for Your Landscape Walk with Joan Miller and Drake White. This is always a very popular walk. And around the Urban Ecology Center here and in the Alamo Area Master Naturalist Demonstration Garden right around the bend, there are some really amazing ornamental native plants that are highlighted that are suitable for almost every landscape. So this is a good one to kind of see them and learn more about them. This is going to be June 28th from 8 to 10 here at the Urban Ecology Center. And we want to thank our volunteers for a few events that we've had recently. The Arboretum unveiled their master plans, the grand reveal for Arboretum San Antonio recently. And we have an educational table there. It was a great event. There were a lot of other folks there, leaders in natural resources conservation, all kinds of others. It was a fun time. It was my first time to actually see the site. It's a really interesting site. If you have the opportunity, if you haven't already been there, take it, because it's really impressive, and excited to see how it develops. And I think this happened this morning, is that right? Haley sent me these photos, and so we want to thank the volunteers that helped in a work day today at Pollinatives at our native plant demonstration garden there today. Thank you all. It's a really cool garden if you haven't seen it. And this one's a little bit sad because we want to say a huge thank you to Juan Loyola, who has been our chapter newsletter editor, and wish him the best as he moves to be closer to important family. And so we just want to say a huge thank you. He's done an incredible job, and we're going to miss him a lot. If anybody is interested in taking on that role, please reach out to us. We are going to need some help. So if it's at all interesting to you, reach out. We will give you some details. And once again, thank you to Juan. We will miss you, and best of luck. We have a couple of call for volunteers. We are looking for task leads for the 2026 Spring Bloom. So this has become our major fundraiser and spring plant sale. And I believe we got plants lead already, is that right, Ben? So that one's taken, okay. So we no longer need the plants lead, that's the first one in the bullet list, but we are looking for leads for setup and breakdown, the cashier lead, volunteer lead, and the post-sale plant care and transport lead. So if you are interested at all, please reach out. I think Joan is going to put that email into the chat for those of you on Zoom. If you're here in the room and you're interested, please speak with Pam. She's right over there. This is a super fun event, and it's a great time to interact with others. And we usually have a lot of really cool plants for sale there. So please consider supporting the chapter and helping out. We have another call for volunteers to help us with social media and in particular our Facebook account. If you are interested in that, please reach out to the same email that Joan put in the chat. And if you're interested in that or you want to know a little bit more about that and you're in the room, you can speak with Haley in the back there. And we have a save the date for a pollinators plant sale that will benefit our chapter. It's going to be on October 25th, and we will provide more details soon. These photos show once again that demonstration garden, that beautiful garden that's there next to the parking lot. And the other photo is the most beautiful green thread I have ever seen in my life that is in that garden. And if you're looking to purchase native plants, please consider going to one of our two nice native plant partners, Pollinatives and the Nectar Bar. Pollinatives is located at 101 South City Commerce, and the Nectar Bar is at 7600 Eckert Road. And these nurseries have really gone above and beyond and have committed to not selling plants that are on the Texas Invasives website and list, and that is huge. And I think they really deserve our support. And in addition to that, they carry really interesting native plants that you cannot find anywhere else, and their inventory is always changing. So please check them out. All right, our next chapter meeting, we're going to have Bryce Maxigemba, and I know he's in the room here somewhere. There he is right there. And he's going to be talking about the Maxigemba Rewild Ranch, our prairie restoration journey, where he's taken land and converted it into prairie. So that is going to be a really good one, June 24th. And we're really excited for tonight's speaker, Brent Doty. And our aquifer, I think, is the best aquifer in the entire world. And we really need to understand it better. And he's here to help us understand the Edwards Aquifer, its geology, hydrology, and ecology of this unique aquifer system. We're going to switch over the presentation, so just bear with us for a little bit as we do that and as we invite Brent up.
Thanks, Lee. And welcome everyone online too. Thanks for being here. Thank you to Lee for inviting me out, and for Joan and Terry for helping with logistics and getting me out here. I'm so happy to be here. I feel very comfortable with this crowd. I too have a yard that does not fit the rest of my neighborhood. All of our plants are different. We have more than one type of grass in our yard. We barely have a yard. It's mostly just a bunch of plants and all natives. And we love watching the pollinators. We love watching the variety of birds that use our yard as an island in this sea of urban environment, right? I'm sure a lot of you feel the same way. I want to talk tonight about a very special topic, the Edwards Aquifer. We had such an amazing storm last night, property damage aside. It was incredible. It was maybe the best storm I've seen since 2022 or thereabouts. So we were really happy to have it. We need about 10 more just like it, maybe 20 more. But I'll talk about that and talk specifically about that drought and some other things. Again, my name is Brent Doty. I'm a researcher and I'm the Associate Director of Research at the Edwards Aquifer Authority. We're a state agency that is tasked with managing, enhancing, and protecting the aquifer. So we limit the withdrawals of the aquifer and we protect the resource and we research how the aquifer functions. First, a little bit about groundwater. All these different colors represent different aquifers in Texas. The left are major aquifers and the right are minor aquifers. They're minor either because of their size or fewer people use them. And the left are the major aquifers, either geographically or more users. So you can see the Edwards Aquifer is kind of in the middle, you know, in the San Antonio region. So not exactly the largest aquifer by any means, but it's actually one of the most productive aquifers in the entire United States. So despite its sort of smaller size, its wells and its springs produce a lot of water. And I'll show you some examples. First, a little bit more about groundwater management. On the left are groundwater management planning areas, and on the right are groundwater management districts. You notice just how many of them there are. And each one represents sort of their own little county and not necessarily entire resources. And that's one of the kind of issues is natural resources don't respect jurisdictional lines or county lines or any of that. So we have all these different districts working together to protect widespread and multi-use resources. So keep that in mind too.
Hold on a sec. Apparently, they're saying that the screen sharing is not coming through online, but other people can see them. So you just keep going.
Okay. I see it says screen share, but there may be a delay, maybe, but we'll.
Everyone else sees it, so.
Okay. All right, this is a closer look at the Edwards Aquifer. You can see it spans from about Brackettville in Kenny County all the way up to Kyle or so in Hayes County. Now there are other Edwards Aquifers. There's the Barton Springs Edwards Aquifer, which is in Austin, and the northern segment, and there's a far western segment. But the segment that we're dealing with tonight is called the San Antonio segment of the Edwards Aquifer Balcones Fault Zone. It spans all these different counties. And you notice here that there are 3 different colors. So that top green color represents the contributing zone. The blue color, and I know you've all heard this, is the recharge zone. And the tan color is the artesian zone. The recharge zone is where the magic happens. That's like what I like to say. The water goes in the aquifer along that pathway because that's where the Edwards limestone is at the surface. That's where we have the most caves, the most fractures. We have streams literally disappearing into the ground as they cross that boundary. And that huge green area, the contributing zone, water that falls there accumulates in the creeks and rivers, and that's what feeds the aquifer. Now, rainfall itself will also help over the recharge zone, but it's really those rivers that provide a lot of the recharge that goes into the aquifer. So it's really sad when you see the drought map and almost this exact area is where the exceptional drought is at the worst, you know? So we're definitely hoping for some improvement there. This is a cartoonized cross section to help you understand how it works so that you can see the contributing zone on the far left, the hill country, feeds into the recharge zone where the water infiltrates into the aquifer and goes deeper into the artesian zone. The artesian zone is where most of the productive wells are located. That's where your city wells are going to be, a lot of different wells for irrigation and farming. And the recharge zone, again, is that ecologically and environmentally sensitive area where we really want the most water quantity and quality protection. When we're talking about aquifer users, we have, of course, out west, lots of agriculture. They grow a variety of different crops. We have our municipal users. More than 2 million people depend on this aquifer every day. We have our industry users. We have rural users that use it for livestock. We have just rural homeowners that have their own well. We have folks that use it for recreation. We also have threatened and endangered species that live in this area and nowhere else on Earth. Nowhere else, in fact, other than these spring systems we have in New Braunfels and in San Marcos. So that's Comal and San Marcos Springs. These are a couple of the largest spring systems in the Southwest United States, particularly Comal Springs, which often flows at more than 300 cubic feet per second. If you think of a cubic foot times 300 times every second, that's how much comes out of Comal Springs on average. Now, right now, it's drastically low, maybe definitely the lowest I've ever seen it, and one of the lowest it's ever been in recorded history. So, back to our story, we've got a very productive, very excellent system. We have more than 2 million people using it for a variety of reasons. We have endangered species. So you can see how critical it is that we manage it very carefully and sustainably. But we face challenges like this drought. I can't express enough how unique and drastic this drought is compared to others. We've all seen droughts. We've seen droughts in the 80s and the 90s, early 2000s, 2010 through 2014 actually was a really bad drought. But this one is a cut above them all in terms of its intensity and now also duration. So the only drought that has been longer than this one is the 1950s drought in recorded history. In the 1950s, there was actually 10 years of rainfall deficit. And this particular drought is edging up on that. It's certainly beating it in terms of high temperatures, so days over 100 degrees, and certain years with lack of rainfall, 2023 and 4, beating many of the years in that stretch of the 1950s. So this current drought is one of the most challenging droughts, certainly, that we've seen. This is the 2014 Medina Lake. That's what it looked like in 2018. And the latest I could get from Google was 2023. It's actually much worse than that now, unfortunately. It's about 30%, well, there's 30 feet of water below the dam when the dam is 74 feet tall. So it's about 3%, 2 or 3% full right now. It's really, really terrible. But this aquifer still has a lot of water in it. Does anyone recognize this photo?
Yeah.
Some of y'all do. People that have been around for a long time do. When I first saw it, and granted I'm from Idaho but moved here nearly 17 years ago now, but when I first saw this photo, I thought it was a geyser, like in Yellowstone. But it's actually a water well. And it was a well that was drilled on the southwest side of town, and it, locally it's called the catfish well, because it was used to supply water for a catfish farming operation. And what's really unique about this well is that that water is flowing naturally out of the ground from artesian pressure. This is not, it's not a pump or anything, naturally flowing out of the Edwards Aquifer. And so I was really intrigued, and I went and found the driller's log. This is the log the driller has to finalize when they drill a well. And there's some unique data in here. It says here that they were drilling and they went through all these different rock layers. They get into the Edwards Aquifer, and then it says they hit a 10-foot void. So they punched through a conduit, a vein in the aquifer, like a cave. And down here on the bottom right is the pump test. And it says that it was flowing at 37,000 gallons per minute. That is incredible, super incredible. The largest municipal wells might do 8 or 10,000. This was more than 3 or 4 times that. So this one well had enough water flowing out of it that it was equivalent to about 1/4 of the city's water use per day. And at the time when this well was drilled, it was completely legal, and this gentleman was in his legal right to use this well for his catfish operation, despite its 37,000 gallons a minute output. So going back to our story we've been building up here, we have all these users, we have endangered species, we face things like drought. Yet we had a system where you could pump this much water, use this much water, and it was completely legal to do so. Do you see any challenges with that? Or I certainly do, right? Absolutely. And so eventually what came out of it was the creation of the Edwards Aquifer Authority. So unique amongst all groundwater management here in Texas, the Edwards Aquifer Authority was not just built around a single county, but around the entire resource. And the first objective was to have an elected board, publicly elected board, to establish water restrictions, to establish pumping withdrawal restrictions. So they set a cap on how much could be pumped out of the aquifer at 572,000 acre feet which is just below the average recharge that the aquifer gets. We don't ever want to pump out more than naturally recharges. So we created this. Now, despite how many people move in from other states, Californians, you're welcome here, I guess. Well, we'll take you from other states, all these areas. We have the same number of water available, 572,000 acre feet. That is why you're seeing a lot of cities get really, they're diversifying their water portfolios because they can't just pump more Edwards water. There's a limit to how much they can pump that. Now, that limit changes when we're in drought. This is called our critical period management. Y'all have, I'm sure most of you have heard of J17. It's an index well. And if you watch any newscasts on any channel here in town, they bring up J17 and they actually show the water level. And that is unique to any major city in the United States where it actually shows an aquifer level on the news. San Antonio does that. And we actually cut that pumping based on the level in that well. So as it goes down during drought, we will cut back and cut back and cut back, ultimately to stage 5, which is a 44% cutback and how much can be pumped out of the aquifer. Well, I'm sorry to say we hit stage 5 very recently. I don't know if it was 3 or 4 days ago. And that is the first time in history that we've done that. So now the cities, San Antonio, New Braunfels, San Marcos, all the major cities, all the pumpers of the aquifer have to cut back pumping by 44%. And the reason we're doing that is not to cause an economic disadvantage. It's so we can slow that rate of decline in the aquifer and keep those springs flowing for as long as we can until conditions return to normal. We also have other programs that protect the aquifer. We have what's called a habitat conservation plan. So this is all about those species and the spring systems. We have blind salamanders. We have hex cave amphipod, which is a little tiny invertebrate. We have fountain darters, which is a really unique kind of like a minnow that is only found in Comal and San Marcos Springs. So the HCP is there to restore and protect the spring systems and to find alternative sources. This is one of my favorite photos, one of my favorite places actually. If y'all have ever been over to Texas State, this is the San Marcos River. And that green grass right there is a native grass. This is Texas wild rice, and it only grows in the upper reaches of the San Marcos River. And the HCP, the Habitat Conservation Plan, is aimed at keeping that river flowing like that at all times, even right now during this worst of drought. We also have programs that do things like subsidize farmers to not irrigate during the worst parts of the drought and to use what's called an ASR, which is a really unique thing. It's called aquifer storage and recovery. So on really, really good years, we pump water from the Edwards and we put it in another aquifer for use during bad years. So right now, about a quarter of the city is using water that has been stored up during good years. So it's in this ASR, this aquifer storage and recovery, south of here in a sandstone aquifer where it sits in a bubble. So it's kind of a bank, if you will. Save, you take during good years and use it during bad years. All right, we also focus on water quality protection. So this aquifer is excellent at having water infiltrate and move, but it's not a great aquifer at filtering really anything. Because if I myself can go caving and go inside the aquifer, you better believe that contaminants and runoff can get in there too. So we have a very robust sampling program. We sample the springs, wells, and rivers all across the system multiple times every year. We're tracking to see if we're seeing any type of contaminants show up. And so far, the water is actually the water quality is very high. And we try to maintain that through a variety of rules. So if you're driving on 1604, pay attention to some of the signs, and you may see a big white sign, and it has an HC with a line through it. That means hazardous cargo, not allowed. So you can't drive big tanker trucks across the recharge zone for the most part. So we really have a lot of rules that prohibit, the disposal of certain things, the construction of wells, the protection of wells, so it's all about protecting the water quality. But accidents do happen, right? This is a accident I went out to about 10 years ago. So that's not water there, that's a pool of diesel fuel from an accident on 1604. But we also work with the fire departments here in town and train them about the aquifer, and they have their own teams that build dams like this and bring out vacuum trucks and reduce runoff from these types of accidents that happen. So it's pretty unique, even in that aspect here in the city. And this is unfortunately a water well, and there are lots of abandoned wells that we look for and try to get them plugged or corrected. So in this case, it's become a trash heap. But luckily, there aren't, pesticides or fertilizers around it. But we unfortunately find dozens of these every year, and these are direct conduits to the aquifer. So they're one of the things that we try to eliminate in our system. This is a map again of the aquifer and some of the places that we sample. My team goes out to these river systems. So these river systems are all major rechargers to the aquifer. We have the Nueces River, the Frio River, Cibolo, and this is Blanco. So it's very important that we make sure that the water going into the system is clean and the water coming out is clean. And those are our springs out here in New Braunfels and San Marcos. And these are the wells that we sample from, all in the artesian and recharge zones. We also collect a lot of data, and by a lot, I mean within the last 5 years, we've collected more than 100 million individual records. And so the reason there are so many records is we have continuously collecting data instruments now. It used to be back in the day, you would have to go out in the field and take a measurement and take that back to the office and jot it down. Now we have rain gauges and soil sensors and water level monitors throughout the system that are continuously picking up measurements and recording those. So we have a lot more data than we used to. And so you can see we're really, really in tune with the aquifer, both meteorologically, the rainfall, the wind, but also hydrologically, the water levels and the flow rates and different aquifers. So aquifers on top of this one. But we're contending with this projected growth. We have to also plan for the future. So this is from the state demographer's website. San Antonio is expected to grow by 54% by 2060. Look at Hayes County, 316% growth projected into 2060, and Comal, 262%. Now, a 54% increase in Bexar County, that's 1 million people, because we're 2 million right now. You add 50, that's another 1 million people. And so far, this was from 2020 into 2025. I think it's pretty accurate. I think it is growing that fast. So we really have to be conscious about the resource and be more diverse about our water use and be more conservative with maybe our plants, right? Maybe grass doesn't make sense in every situation. I'm preaching to the choir here, believe me, I realize that. So what do we do next? How do we plan for that? What do we do in the future? We are building what we like to call our sustainability toolbox. And we have a few tools in there, and we're trying to add to that toolbox. Number one, conservation easements. I'm sure y'all are familiar with those. That's land that is set aside that cannot be developed. It can't be turned into a golf course or a parking lot or a freeway. It has to be maintained as a native property. And we're looking at conservation practices. We call them nature-based solutions. These are not new. These are solutions that have been used for generations to protect land, reduce erosion, and increase native landscapes. And of course, education. So going back to easements, I like to show this example because I think it's really poignant. This is an area not too far from here. It's on the recharge zone. This is 1604. And although this photograph looks like it's from World War II, the year is actually 1995. So makes us all feel kind of old, but not a whole lot going on. This is 2002, and that's 2014, more than 10 years ago. Pretty incredible, right? Here's another spot, again, on the north side of town, on the recharge zone, 1995 and 2014. And keep expanding that until today, 2025, all across this region. It's problematic when you're thinking about the aquifer, when you're thinking this is the very place where that water goes into the ground. Here's one more example. This is kind of where I live, near Helotes, area code 78254, one of the fastest growing area codes or zip codes in the city. This is 1995, and that's what it looks like today. 95 and today. You all know what the difference is? Government Canyon. This is Government Canyon, state natural area, and the properties around it that were all protected under the Edwards Aquifer Protection Program. They're all conservation easements. So for the next indefinite amount of time, this is always going to look like that. It's always going to have our native plants, our native habitat in a landscape that is very protective of the aquifer. And we didn't just stop there. This is a map of all the protected lands across the entire system, now totaling more than 278,000 acres across the system. So it's not just an agency like the EAA or the city like the city of San Antonio. It took all the citizens to come together for a program like this. The city has funded more than $300 million of conservation, and they've done it through bond measures that were voted on by the citizens, overwhelmingly voted on to approve this, to buy the conservation easements. So over time, since the year 2000, all these properties in green have been acquired by the city, and in pink by Texas Parks and Wildlife Department and other partners to preserve this land. And you can see this is a large chunk of land that will always remain in its native state. I think that is one of the biggest tools of our environmental toolbox, right, to protect this system. And it's actually part of what I do for my job is I help select the properties that the city will later pick up into the program. But that's just one tool. What are other tools we can use? Recently, the Edwards Aquifer Authority was granted a property from the city called the Field Research Park. This is in Northeast Bexar County, and it's an area where we are doing research specifically on conservation and groundwater enhancement. We are using the native landscape to our advantage. We're using what's called nature-based solutions, land management in other circles, natural infrastructure in other circles. Basically, how can we use the land to help restore the land and restore the native soils, the native plants that help actually enhance recharge? So this is using practices that you may have heard of, like rock berms, rock sills, brush berms, berm and swales, to slow, spread, and sink excess stormwater runoff. One of the biggest problems here we have in town is a lot of flooding, because we've channelized streams, we've added pavement everywhere, we've built roads. Well, what happens is runoff has more intensity, it causes more erosion, we lose our topsoil, we lose plants, we lose our protection from the water quality. And the whole point out here is to reverse that, to let nature do the work. Now, in concept, qualitatively, there's a lot of evidence that suggests that these practices are very beneficial. But we're setting out to prove that quantitatively. So at the Field Research Park, we're setting up experiments where we're using land management, and we're looking at it on a almost molecular level to look at the water budget to see just how much these things might benefit the landscape. So this is just showing you the east side of the property. All those little numbers there are different experiments, so different land management features. And on the west side, a few more, including a couple that I'll go into more detail that are really interesting to me. So in concept, if you look at a nature-based solution like a berm and swale, it's pretty simple. You have runoff that runs off and that accumulates in the swale. The swale is kind of another fancy name for a ditch, right? It builds up in that ditch. And over time, you have the growth of woody vegetation. So you have the roots that are enhancing actually infiltration, because those roots extend down into the rocks. And you build a soil profile and you build vegetation over time. And over time, This simple feature multiplied across a wide area is going to reduce erosion. It's going to reduce stormwater runoff, and it will likely increase spring flow around that area. And this is an example that was put in 2019 or so at the Field Research Park and has since been covered over with native plants and grasses and is so far working despite the lack of rainfall. And these are a few other examples of the rock berm and one rock dam. Now, are these going to solve every water challenge we have out there? No, but it is another tool for our toolbox: conservation, education, and restoration. We're using a number of instruments and tools out there to look at these things, including drones. So I'm a drone pilot. I fly a few different types of drones looking at thermal infrared, multispectral, and LiDAR. These help us use remote sensing techniques to see what's happening across a broad area. Multispectral in particular may be of interest to this group because you can quantitatively detect chlorophyll in the plants, and it shows you if a plant is doing well or if it's dying out. So you'll see here in the green here, those were plants that are doing better. And the yellows and reds, those are plants that are doing worse. Of course, I took that peak summer, 2023. So the plants were not doing well. But they have since improved. We've had a little bit of rainfall, more now, and I'm hoping to see a difference. But multispectral can actually quantitatively show you that difference. We also use LiDAR. So LiDAR removes the vegetation because the laser is bouncing off the surface and back to the drone. And depending on how many times that laser hit plants and things like that, you can actually remove the vegetation and see the landscape of how it would be if it were totally void of anything. But the reason you want to do that is you can calculate volumes. In our case, you can calculate the volume of the soil and how much rainfall may accumulate in the soil. We're also using geophysical techniques because we can't see under the surface. We're using techniques like electrical resistivity tomography and nuclear magnetic resonance. Fancy words, but they do very incredible things. First off, the NMR, nuclear magnetic resonance. We've all heard of an MRI machine before. It works exactly like that. It's detecting the molecules of the hydrogen atom underground. So this instrument can detect water and give you an exact percentage of the water below ground, up to about 30 feet in our case. So it can show you wetting fronts right after a rainfall. Where is that water moving? How far is it getting underground? And is it actually recharging into the aquifer? No other instrument that I know of can do that. Secondly, for a broader regional area, we have resistivity. Resistivity, the way it works is you kind of put a current through the ground, and that current is going to move very fast through conductive materials like water, because water has metals in it. So it will move through water, and it won't move through things that are highly resistive, like rock or void space. So you can use it to kind of visualize what the subsurface looks like and where water may infiltrate or move to. All right, now that's all about water quantity. This project that we're working on is about water quality. So this is on the west side of our field research park. And we have this feature that is rather new. It actually has started occurring in the last couple of years. After some development occurred down here, well, guess what? We had that more intense runoff, and it was causing what's called head cutting erosion. I'm sure that's familiar to a lot of you too. It's when you have a lot of high velocity runoff and it's kind of head cutting a feature into the landscape that didn't originally belong there. So we're calling this Project SCAR. How do you reduce that head cutting erosion? And how do you improve water quality of the water that's doing that? This is a drone footage of that SCAR feature, we call it. And like I said, a few years ago, this feature did not exist. It was just covered with these other plants, but it has since formed from upstream development. We had an army of volunteers come out, and we're building these natural infrastructure, nature-based solution projects. This one here is called a Media Luna. I like that name. It's a half moon shape of rocks. And on the right here in the channel, these are one rock dams. So they're kind of dams that are one rock high across the channel. And they're designed for the same purpose, to slow down that stormwater, spread it out, sink it, and build soil over time and build plants over that soil. And then we let the plants do the work. So you can see the before up here and the after down here. The channel was equipped with a dozen or so of these projects. And each side of the project is hooked up with an automatic sampler. So this thing is called an ISCO. And whenever it rains and water flows through that channel, the ISCO is going to automatically collect samples at the start of the feature and at the end of it. And what I want to see is that it reduces suspended sediment. That's going to be the stuff that turns stormwater into chocolate milk. I want to see that it's reducing that, and then we have cleaner water entering our watersheds. So this project is both focused at reducing erosion and improving water quality. I have not yet seen a sample, except I did see today on the cameras that this channel had flow in it for the first time in 2 years. So I will be there tomorrow, checking out these samples and analyzing them and see what we get. But yeah, it's been really frustrating putting all this in and then waiting literally years now for it to rain. But it did rain, and we may actually get some rain tonight too. All right, y'all, I know that was a lot. I gave you an overview of the EAA, of the Edwards Aquifer and how it works, and then some of the things that we're doing to protect it. But I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I'll also check the chat here for questions.
So there are a few on the
Okay.
chat. I can share them with you, but let's take some if there are any in the room.
Okay, yes.
Does the San Antonio River Authority or the Parks Department actually use these techniques you're showing? Because what you showed there in Stone Oak Park, I've seen hundreds of feet in Stone Oak Park. I've walked that since they opened it. And the erosion you're showing there, there's opportunities, what I'm seeing.
Yes.
They're letting their property erode, and as a matter of fact, I would assume that any public property is gonna erode, even if it's protected.
Right.
Is there any move to other agencies to improve?
That's an excellent question, and actually the
Can you repeat the question? I'm
Yes,
sorry,
the
for
question is, are other agencies doing anything to address erosion and these water quality issues I've been talking about? And the answer is locally, yes. The San Antonio River Authority is really focused right now on low impact development that's reducing the impervious cover, and also reducing this previous notion that streams need to be channelized. They're going back to kind of rewilding streams. They're adding a lot of native plants and actually incorporating systematic flooding as part of that. River channels were meant to have floods, and they're restoring that along a large part of the watershed. Now, have they covered everything? No, but they are working towards that goal. Sir.
On your site, you said the development upstream of your site did that. Are there no laws that say you did something to your land, you have to stop the water flowing? I was coming from where I come from, the Chicago area. The object is extra water never leaves your land. Now, how you do it is an engineering feature they choose.
Right. I liken
Repeat the
it.
question again, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Thank you.
That's okay.
The question is, are there no laws that restrict development and how that development affects your neighbors, right? Not in this city.
Not in this city.
When I was
Built in 1995.
Yeah,
When I came here in 2009 from Idaho, I also thought it was a bit different. And I liken it back to that groundwater issue. You saw that giant well and how that was legal. Well, that's still legal everywhere else in Texas except for the Edwards Aquifer. And that's called the common law rule. It's also known as the rule of the biggest pump. So you can pump and use as much water as you want as long as it's beneficial use, regardless of impacts to your neighbors, to springs, to natural systems. And the rules about development are not much dissimilar, especially around here. Now that is changing somewhat. There are certainly rules about what can go on the recharge zone and how that is protected, but it is changing over time. But currently there, it's difficult. The situation is challenging with developers and with these concerns. So I would say it's migrating, but we're not there yet.
Can I ask a question from
Yes.
Zoom? It kind of ties in a little bit, and the question is, how much concern is there for the aquifer with the city and county emphasis on increasing many types of industry without much monitoring of sometimes exponential increases in water use? So county and city promoting industries that increase tremendously the water use. What is the concern for that?
So county and city approving industries that increase water use. I think that's challenging. They may be referring to like data centers. Data centers use a lot of energy and water, but a lot of those data centers are currently mitigating those impacts through other conservation means. So a lot of them actually purchase conservation easements. I know Microsoft recently donated more than $1 million to the EAA to purchase a conservation easement and to reduce their water footprint. And we use that to buy a 1,200 acre easement in Comal County, certainly the largest easement of its kind in that region. So some of them I think are doing the right thing, offsetting those impacts. But you have to remember that despite all these added industries, that number of how much water we can pump from the aquifer does not change. So the cities will have to be more creative with how they get that water to support those industries. They can't just pump more Edwards water. Far back.
Lately in the news, we've heard about the developer that wants to put, I think a certain amount of water into the Balcones Creek. And there's a lot of the TCEQ involvement, but I haven't heard anything about the Edwards Aquifer Authority involvement. So how do you mesh with TCEQ?
That's a good question. So the question is, in the news, there's a development going on, potential development up in the Balcones watershed, where developer plans on using treated wastewater direct injection into Balcones Creek. And the TCEQ regulates that, but what does the EAA do? Well, currently, because the TCEQ regulates that, our job is to help research that and help the regulators understand if their policy is sufficient or not. So our goal there right now is to collect a lot of baseline data to sample wells, springs, and creeks all around that watershed and provide that data to both the community and the regulators. And if that project goes through, the community will be able to tell, because we'll continue our sampling, if anything really does change from what they're going to do. I know that's not the best answer. We can't just, the EAA does not have the regulatory authority in their statute from the state to say that can't happen. And it goes back to this, well, how do we control developers? It's a changing system, but currently we don't have the regulatory authority for that yet. Yes.
I'm trying to decide which one to go on. I mean, you have such good visuals up there. I mean, those of us who've been working on this a long time knew that was gonna happen, the one where it's all been built up. Then,
Yeah.
of course, it went on ahead and happened. But now, I mean, you could get some data off of this. And has anybody talked about saying, look, you guys are gonna have to come in and do some remediation here? Or you can continue this and because it's so black and white, what you have up there.
Yeah. So I've showed some pictures. This goes to the question. I've showed some pictures of some development, and it was rather stark, the before and after. Well, can we go back now and research this and change it? And that's what we're trying to do, especially with conserved lands. We're specifically targeting watersheds that would otherwise be developed right now. So the city's looking at ranking properties that are potentially going into the program. And we target these watersheds like along the Frio River, which may eventually turn into what we see in those pictures if we don't do something now. And the advantage of the easements is that they're in perpetuity. They're forever easements. So if you put properties under easement within, say, the Frio watershed, it will never become a parking lot, a neighborhood, any of that. And that's why we're targeting those river systems, to sort of prevent that even 50 years, 100 years from now from looking like that. Yes, back table.
Are you, or is the Edwards Aquifer Authority concerned about the number of like self-service car washes that are popping up everywhere? Like I swear, there's one.
There's one every corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, are we concerned with the number of self-service car washes? Yes and no. I'm certainly concerned with excessive water use anywhere in the city, but it's actually pretty highly regulated. And a lot of those car washes use what's called the purple pipe network. So here in town, they use treated wastewater, not for a direct injection into a recharge creek, but for a car wash or for landscaping like a golf course or even the Riverwalk itself is all mostly treated wastewater. So while those car washes are popping up everywhere, not all of them are using water directly from the aquifer or from San Antonio water systems, believe it or not. Pretty interesting. Yes, sir.
I heard you say before, one operator, so are you using like high, or are you accessing more robust capabilities from NASA or NOAA, National Weather Agency?
Yeah, question is about my remote sensing experience. I do use drones. We have a few different drones, and we also use some satellite remote sensing data, like LiDAR data and hill shade information, Landsat. But the drones give such higher resolution. So our drones showed some of the imagery. You can identify individual plant species in a picture based on the resolution. It's incredible. Yeah, it's incredible. But we continue to use more, and they're just such an effective resource now, not only for the research, but also for like ecological and environmental monitoring. They're very, very successful at that.
How about like the simple stuff?
Haven't used that yet. Just kind of started into droning maybe like 5 years ago. So I haven't gotten into hyperspectral yet. Getting there.
So we get a chat question. Can you speak to reclamation of wastewater to potable standards and aquifer recharge?
Yeah, this is another question about treated wastewater, and I think they're getting back to this issue that we're having a lot of these upcoming towns in hill country suggesting using treated wastewater. Now, currently, they're required to have it meet recreational standards before they put it back into the watershed. But unfortunately, there are lots of incidents where that exceeds water quality standards and regulations, and that's the issue. It's not the issue with most of the time, it's the issue with every once in a while, these things will be overwhelmed and fail and cause problems. And I know there are lots of contested hearings right now with TCEQ. We are flooding them with a lot of data saying we need to take a closer look at this, but right now the regulations are still there and they still allow it on the contributing zone, not the recharge zone, but it's a growing concern amongst a lot of people. So I do expect to see change over time. Sir, in the back.
I've seen in my neighborhood within the last few years an exponential increase with watering restrictions of people installing artificial turf, which I would think, you know, contributes to the habitat loss and runoff and everything. Is there anything that we can do to kind of still that or stop that?
Yeah, so the question is, in gentleman's neighborhood, they're using a lot of artificial turf and other things. I suspect it uses less water, but in fact, it causes other problems like more runoff. I think that's where we use that tool, education. And this group is a prime example of that. We all in here know that native plants use less water, they look better, they help pollinators, they help pretty much everything, and they're a terrific solution to drought tolerant landscapes and xeriscapes.
Well, the senator that's the head of the water committee at the state level was recommending this as a way to help.
Yeah, that goes back with education, and to that problem specifically, we noticed that too, that every once in a while, elected officials are just not knowledgeable about some of these topics. And so we proactively, with the candidates coming up, invited all of them out to hear a lecture very similar to this, and about 40 candidates that were on the ballot came out and got this same lecture. So our goal is to educate them on these topics before they even go into office and have to vote on things. Yes, sir.
I apologize for asking such a cynical question, but I hear a lot, and you certainly mentioned it, about easements that work into perpetuity But I just wonder, under, you know, with different administrations, with population pressures, with commercial pressures, with money at stake and so forth. Are these protections genuinely into perpetuity? I mean, will they persist?
Yeah, the question is about conservation easements and if they're genuinely under perpetuity. So despite changes in politics and rules, are these bound by anything? And they're actually contractually bound. So violations are both financial and legal if they are broken, despite any changes. And these have been set since the year 2000 now, so 25 years going on, and not a single issue has come to a case hearing. There hasn't been a single fine levied because everyone is on board. And when I say a vast majority of citizens voted for this, when it was up for bond measure in 2015, 80% of San Antonio's population voted yes to continue this measure. That's bipartisan, that's across the entire city. You will not see a number that high on any measure. It's incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah. Lee, did we get all the online?
Not all of them, but we can go with some of the rooms.
Yes.
Where is it? All, most of your funding, or is it all city? Your funding?
So the EAA is funded through actually pumping fees. So the pumpers of the aquifer pump per acre foot or pay per acre foot that they pump out. And that's from municipalities, from irrigators and industries. So a portion you might see in your water bill, it'll say Edwards Aquifer Authority fee or something like that. That's actually based on how many acre feet saws or your supplier is pumping out of the ground. And we use that both for our operations side, like the research side, the permitting side, but also for the habitat conservation plan. So spring restoration, biomonitoring, vegetative surveys. So they're watching out for invasive species like aquatic invasives, elephant ear, different invasives that crowd the native habitats, but I'm sure you're familiar with. Yes, sir.
Last year, I was a member of another organization where they had a climate change series that went all year. And we had a speaker, a geology professor from UT Austin, who did a lot of modeling of 18 different climate models. And they backed them up to 30s and ran them to the president. They tracked it throughout the 50s and stuff with the info. Does the EAA have those type of researchers come to your organization and talk to your board, talk to your staff? Because these 18 models into the future, they make the drought of the 50s look like an everyday occurrence.
Yeah, the question is about modeling into the future, and if we use other researchers and modelers to help us estimate the amount of water that will be available into the future. And the answer is yes. We're working with the Oklahoma Climate and Meteorological Center. We're working with researchers from UTSA and others to downscale global climate models, these 18 models you're talking about, to predict what may happen 50 or even 100 years from now. And while all those models show a gradual increase in temperature, they don't all agree on how much rain we might get. They all agree that it's going to be hotter, but some models show we might actually have more rainfall, and that rainfall is going to be more intense, as were our drought periods might be more intense. And what are we kind of seeing right now? We're seeing very intense periods of drought, followed by very intense periods of rainfall. Isn't that interesting? And that's kind of what they're showing into the future.
And these climate models, now that I remember, were taken, they correlated it to stalactites in local caves. And they took it like back 1,000 years.
Yeah, we're actually
and it's a researcher out of UT Austin.
We're talking to a researcher. I'm glad you mentioned that. He mentioned a study using stalactites to look at historic drought. We're talking to UT researchers right now to look at cypress trees along the Frio River. So some of these bald cypress trees are hundreds of years old. So if we can core those trees and look at the tree rings and see the drought record, we want to see if the droughts hundreds of years ago were like the droughts we see today. Were they longer? Were they shorter? Were they like the 1950s? Were they like now? So I'm really intrigued by that. Yes, sir.
Talk about roads and veins and
Yeah.
is it conceivable that if the water pressure drops enough, then there's hydraulic failure throughout the entire system with essentially the ceiling
Right.
collapses onto the.
Okay, the question is about the Edwards Aquifer hydraulic connectivity. So I mentioned there are veins and conduits. And the question is there a point at which we could see a loss of pressure from this excessive drought? And my answer is, we'll see a loss of pressure, but the aquifer is not going to go empty. This aquifer is hundreds of feet thick and hundreds of miles wide. There's a lot of water down there. What we're worried about is that top 5%. We want it to keep flowing through the springs. The springs not only provide habitat for these species, but they demonstrate the health of the aquifer. That water doesn't just stay there, it flows all the way down to the coast. It's very important to the salinity levels along the bays and estuaries. Which is important for a number of birds, including whooping cranes that only eat blue crab that come out of those bays. So it's all very uniquely connected. Now, could we see damage to the aquifer from continual drawdown? Absolutely, the springs may stop flowing, but there will always be a certain amount of pressure and water level to sustain human life and wells. We're more concerned, certainly concerned with that, along with this biological ecological component.
So we are out
Oh,
of
all right.
time, but thank you so much. Let's give. That was a great presentation. I learned a lot. I always learn something. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. I want to remind everybody in the room, we have a lot of plants over here at the Plants by Donation, and there was some really cool species tonight that I haven't seen before. I don't know if they're left. There was some agarita over there, some other really cool things. And then somebody last month left this bottle, and we're hoping maybe you're in the room again tonight to pick it up. Oh, it's Jerry's. It's Jerry's. Okay, thank you. Thanks everyone for being here tonight.